Welcome to the webinar, everybody. It is Discover, the Lean Leadership Learning Tour. This is a terrific learning experience LEI has produced in collaboration with the Toyota Production System Support Center, otherwise known as TSSC, as well as GE Appliances, a hire company. Dates for are November 14th and 16th, and we're here to tell you all about it. Now I'll introduce our speakers for today's webinar. We have four with us today. First, we have Josh Howell, the president of the Lean Enterprise Institute. We have Karen Gadet, senior coach with the Lean Enterprise Institute. Rich Calvaruso, senior director of the Lean Management Office at GE Appliances, a hire company. And we have Scott Porter, a group manager at the Toyota Production System Support Center. To start, I'm going to turn things over to Josh at LEI to give us a brief introduction to the tour and what you can expect.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Thanks to our panelists. Thanks for those of you who are joining us or who will watch this later. There will be a recording with the slides that folks can watch later. So look, I'm super excited for this tour. This is one of the best things that the Lean Enterprise Institute does. Personally, as a learner myself, for those that have gone on this tour, we're going to hear some testimonials later. You'll understand this is a tremendous learning experience. Generally speaking, I think we feel that learning at the Gemba, where people are doing real work, is the best place to learn this stuff. So this is one of the perfect opportunities to do that. So a little bit about the purpose. You can see here things that we're going to cover over the course of the week. Learn about leadership's role in this thing we call lean transformation. We're going to cover that intensively, directly with leaders who are in fact leading lean transformation. We'll understand a little bit about sort of the success and the failure. What are the things that are key to lean transformation, are key to lean thinking and practice? What are some of the things that can get in the way? We'll hear about that directly from companies that are experiencing these things. I'll spend some time grasping kind of the technical tools, the management requirements, again, those kind of key ingredients to practicing lean effectively. We'll understand TPS as a complete business system, not just a set of tools, but a complete business system, a culture. In fact, Scott from TSSC is going to tell us more about that in a little bit. And then you will get a chance to connect with business leaders, not only the business leaders that will be hosting us at GE Appliances and Toyota, but also the fellow business leaders that will be with us on the tour. So we'll get a chance to learn directly from GE Appliances, from Toyota. We'll also get a chance to learn from one another, peer-to-peer learning, which we think is critical, super valuable. As I mentioned, this is one of, I think this is maybe the best sort of learning product that LEI offers, especially for business leaders who are responsible for leading lean in their organizations, solving business problems. We've been putting on these tours, as you can see here, for a number of years. We visited various locations all the way to Japan. We've taken a couple of groups, several tours in Kentucky. This will be our first time in the state of Indiana. That's not true, actually. We had a different tour. We called it the Midwest Learning Tour, where we spent some time in the states of Michigan and Indiana. So we'll be returning to Indiana in this instance. Here's a photo from one of the tours. If you see that kind of funny guy in the background with his hand high in the air, John Shook was one of the prior members who helped lead one of our prior tours. So anyway, this is the kind of thing we've been doing for a while. We haven't been able to do it much in recent years for obvious reasons due to the pandemic. So we're excited to kind of get back in the swing of things with this tour coming up this year. Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about what folks have said who have joined us on some of these prior tours?
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. So I'm so excited to bring this learning experience back to the community. Many of the testimonials that we've heard reside in these three really key areas. So one, the ability to create a strategic vision. As a leader trying to lead others through transformation of this nature, right? This gives you an opportunity to really see behind the scenes how to develop organizational and human capability. And how to integrate that into the management system. You'll see real life examples and be able to interact with those actually doing it. You'll be able to create, practical action plan that you can take back based on your unique situation. So you're going to bring your information into this experience. You'll get to compare and contrast against what you're experiencing, get great coaching from our coaches, and then draft a plan of what you want to do when you return back to your own organization. And then again, be coming together with other kind of like-minded executives and leaders who are in this transformation of their business and dealing with kind of the key critical problems of what's happening right now in kind of the macro business environment. So how to kind of learn from each other throughout this experience and setting up a target image for yourself and learn from others. Next, I'd like to share with you a little bit more in regards to kind of the detail of the agenda that's going to happen. So the first day, we're going to kick off. We'll hear from our coaches and other learners. We'll get an understanding of what we mean by the dimensions of a transformation. We'll go then into GE Appliances on day 2, where we'll get an intimate behind the scenes look, which Rich will take us through in just a few moments about what's going on at GE Appliances. And we'll touch on some very key fundamental areas of a transformation, hear from those who are actually doing it inside their work. On day 3, we're going to step behind the scenes with TSSC and get practical experiences and learn more deeply about the Toyota production system and how you can then continue to improve and apply that to your unique situation. So then with that, I'd like to kind of just reintroduce from a coach's perspective who's going to join us on our tour. We heard from Josh, who's our president at Lean Enterprise Institute. I'll be there myself. We're going to have the treat of being joined by Jim Womack, our founder from Lean Enterprise Institute. We have Jamie Benini from TSSC and Scott Porter, the group manager from TSSC, who we're going to hear from in just a moment. And then Rich Calvaruso, who's a senior director of the Lean Management Office at GE Appliances. I'd really love to kind of take this opportunity to introduce Rich. He joined GE back 34 years ago. And he has been on this lean journey for 20 years. So as you all may or may not recognize or realize yet, this journey is a long one. And he has had incredible experiences, which he is going to share with us next. After Rich, we're going to hear from Scott. Scott began in 2000 with NUMMI, which is the New United Motor Manufacturing Organization from Fremont, California, which was the first kind of joint venture between General Motors and Toyota back in the day. So with that, I'd love to hand off to Rich and hear some more about what we're going to see and experience. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Karen. Appreciate it. So if the next slide, we'll talk about a little bit about GE Appliances, a hire company. So this the tour that will happen here at Appliance Park, and Appliance Park is in Louisville, Kentucky. It's a 750-acre complex. It's quite large. We've actually been producing appliances here for 70 years. This is our 70th anniversary of production happening in Louisville, Kentucky. We produce, we employ about 7,300 people here. And this is our headquarters, including our design. So you'll get to see this large facility. It's actually so large, we have our own zip code here. And it's pretty interesting. So we'll tell you a little bit of history of that. And next, what I want to talk about is what to expect when you come. Okay, so what you're going to see here is a journey that started after we've been doing this for 50 years. So we had been producing appliances in Louisville, Kentucky for 50 years, and we were far from a lean company. In fact, it was like a completely foreign topic 20 years ago. So what you're going to see is a brownfield kind of a transformation and what that looks like and what that requires. Okay, we'll talk about our journey. Right, I'll tell you some of the story of like what we learned, how we learned it, where we struggled, where we stumbled, and what we did along the way to continue to improve and learn. When you're here, I think one thing that you're going to see is we're going to take you down to the floor. So you will get up close view of the shop floor. You'll be right up next to the assembly line, and I think you'll appreciate that here. You'll get to see, we're going to be touring our washer plant. So you'll get to see this. You'll get to see some of what you see in that picture right there. Okay, and then in the next, to continue on of like what to expect, is when we're gonna walk kind of into one of our value streams, right? And this is a value stream of a laundry product, right? And so here at GE Appliances, we're not just assembly. We're pretty vertically integrated. We have, and you'll see very similar when you go to Toyota. But we have stamping, we have injection molding, we have paint. We have assembly process. We have like lots of sub-assembly process that all come together. But what we're going to really highlight is some of the core lean principles. Okay, so we're going to talk about standardized work, right? It's one of our foundational things we practice here, and so you'll get to see what that looks like. You'll get to see what one piece flow looks like. You'll see our stop and notify system. More well known maybe as an and-on system, but it's really more of a social technical system. So we'll kind of explain what that means a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about our TPM system and how we're doing that here. And you'll see some concepts like things like manifest and bingo board and some other things. I didn't include them all here, but you'll get to see sort of like the system of what it takes to actually build the product, right? And so how do we integrate people and process on a large scale, to produce high volume manufacturing using these principles. So that's really what to expect. And then if you jump ahead the other thing you'll see, I think, is that you're going to have ability to have interactive sessions with our frontline team, including our team leaders. Okay. And these are just some of the folks you may interact with, but we're going to be down on the floor and you'll get to interact directly with a team leader or a shop leader or different folks, and then there'll be some ability to do some Q&A. So I think the last thing I didn't really put on here is you'll definitely get your walking in, so bring some comfortable shoes that day because we're gonna be a lot of time out at the Gemba. Okay, so I think I'm going to turn it over now to Scott, and I appreciate you guys' time. Thanks.
Okay, good afternoon. Yes, my name is Scott Porter. I'm a group manager with TSSC. Just to give you a little bit of background about what TSSC is and how they came about. Back in the early days of the lean transformation, there was a significant interest surrounding the Toyota Way, especially when we launched our facility in Georgetown, Kentucky, the Camry plant. And it was published in quite a number of books, and so it drove a significant interest in the late 80s. Well, in 1992, TSSC specifically was founded as kind of an organization to help our suppliers meet the exceeding demand to drive, small lot sizes and high frequency and those types of activities. So at that point, TSSC was formed, and it was known as the Toyota Supplier Support Center. And we worked with a bunch of organizations, and we offered our services to anybody willing to want to adopt the Toyota production system with some criterias and some vetting. But fast forward about 20 years or so, and in 2011, TSSC became a nonprofit, and we kind of divided our attention, and we started to focus with pretty much any organization, public institution or whatnot. And if you go to the next slide, we've established our mission is to contribute to society by sharing TPS with public institutions and improving the general level of North American manufacturing industry. So our focus shifted a little, and we started to take on other clients, and we have found that it applies pretty much not just manufacturing processes, but any process you can apply these simple principles to. So, and one of our other mission parameters is to develop Toyota's future leaders. So our members are constantly learning and applying the principles externally, which will help them when they come back into the fold inside of Toyota. So now let's talk a little bit about this learning tour that we have. We actually launched something that this activity early in this past year, and we've had some really good success. And we have a general agenda here. We will meet at the Indiana facility, and just to give you a little bit of background, I didn't add the statistics about TMMI, which is located in Princeton, Indiana. However, they employ roughly 7,000 employees. They build the Highlander and the Sienna minivan, and they've just launched the Grand Highlander. That if you watched football last night, you saw one of the newest commercials for the Grand Highlander, which was pretty exciting for us. But they originally launched in 1998, and one of their first vehicles was the Tundra. So the Tundra first came off the Indiana assembly line originally way back in '98. So they have roughly 4 million square feet under roof, which equates to, I think it's like 80 football fields. Notice the football reference a couple of times, but and similar to the GE site, we have a stamping shop, we have a injection molding plastics facility, paint assembly, and a whole lot of logistics type activities. So typically during this tour, we'll share the TSSC approach on how to do a transformation, and then also share significant examples of building those capabilities outside of Toyota, because we have a number of years of experience. As we said, we just celebrated our 30th anniversary as TSSC, and we're approaching, or we surpassed, roughly supporting 500 separate organizations in their journeys. So then we'll board a tram and we'll tour the body shop, which is significantly automated, and we'll see a lot of automation and how the body panels all get formed and deform a vehicle. We can't go into paint because of quality control restrictions and contamination issues, but then we'll come back out and tour some of assembly and kind of see how the vehicle transforms from bare metal to a painted unit all the way through, and then we'll see it roll off the end of the assembly line. Then we'll do a little bit more of a debrief into what we saw, and we highlight some of the key points. And our main emphasis is on the organizational culture piece that is necessary for any kind of transformation like this. We'll dive into some of the key tools like standardized work. We'll watch a video and kind of highlight how we demonstrate how we use that tool specifically with that process. And then we'll kind of have a wrap-up session. And then later on, we'll break out into other extended sessions for specific topics. If there's interest, we'll have breakout sessions, and you can go and attend if you're interested in TPM or some of the other areas. We'll add some additional content in that. And then next, I'd like to cover kind of our perspective. I introduced how we share what TPS means to outside of Toyota, and I've defined it here on this slide about organizational culture of highly engaged people solving problems and innovating to drive company performance, that's created and sustained by this three-part system of the philosophical, the technical tools, and the managerial role, as we have it highlighted here by the triangle. And we emphasize very heavily that without all three sides, it's very challenging and difficult to sustain. The concepts of TPS themselves are fairly simple. It's not rocket science. We're not putting a man on the moon or anything like that. But the activity and the emphasis and the energy necessary to transform an organization is extremely challenging and difficult. And so we'll dive into some of those kind of key concepts, and predominantly on the leadership side or the managerial side, as far as kind of the roles and the organizational structure necessary to drive this continuous improvement mindset. From there, some of the key learning points that you'll be able to see at the Indiana facility is see it in action from an established site. As I said, they launched in 1998. So they've been doing this for 25 plus years. And they are highly engaged. We've even had some feedback about it's obvious, and you can see the team members' engagement as even just touring through the facility, how the activities work. You know, Rich mentioned their stop and notify, or their and-on system. You'll hear and see that in action. You'll see quick response by leads and group leaders to address issues as they're surfaced. And again, we'll go in deeper, a little bit more than what I described on the preceding slide in regards to the TPS definition, some of the general principles and rules surrounding that, and some specific examples in some of the 500 plus organizations that we've encountered and worked with over the last 30 years. And one of the comments, I haven't been involved in all of those preceding ones that were shared earlier by, I think Karen showed the preceding years of this engagement. However, I have been given feedback about the two sites, specifically GE and the preceding one was our Georgetown facility, but they complement each other very well, given the area at which, or the longevity of how long they've been doing it. The brownfield site of the GE facility, and then the greenfield site that it started off, and it's kind of been embedded from day one. So, and here's just some of the general feedback that we've heard from this activity about changing perspectives of the executives. You know, they come in with some mindset that says, oh, this is, you know, we know what TPS is, or we know what lean culture is, but they leave with a totally different perspective. And here's just some of the quotes that we have captured from that. So with that, I will hand it over back to Josh.
Back to me, Scott. Yeah,
Okay.
thanks. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Karen. So just quickly on kind of next steps, I guess, for those that want to learn more, or perhaps go all the way to registration, a little bit more about the tour. So the target audience, really, I mean, we've designed this tour for executives and managers. You know, you heard both Rich and Scott talk about the time that we will spend on the floor, seeing operators creating value for customers. But we will kind of pre-frame what we're going to see on the floor, the use of lean, the use of TPS, within the context of the business challenges that both GE Appliances and Toyota have been kind of tackling over the decades they've been practicing lean. So we really want to be sure to provide kind of a top-down and bottom-up perspective on the lean transformations of these companies, and show very clearly sort of the connections between the high-level business challenges, business problems to solve, and the specific kind of problem solving and improvement activity that's happening on the shop floor, and how the lean tools and processes and behaviors are enabling those problems, that you know, kind of micro and macro problem solving to happen in an integrated way. We're looking for like strongly encouraging small groups, or at least like pairs, kind of buddies, to come along on this tour. We just find that greatly enhances the process of learning over the course of the couple of days, and is integral when you return to your company to put these ideas into practice, to have someone to kind of continue to think with and plan with on what to do with the learning that you get during the tour. We find that that's like a critical kind of success factor to getting the most value out of this experience that you possibly can. Kind of how to express interest and apply. There's a relatively simple form that you can fill out. In fact, we'll post a link to that form here for your convenience. You can also simply go to lean.org, our website, where you can find out more information and apply and express interest in in joining the tour. And then the cost, there's $5,500 per person, which essentially covers everything once you arrive. You've got to get there, but the $5,500 will cover transportation and food and all the expenses that will be incurred over the couple of days. So with that, I think we're gonna wind down the presentation, invite Matt to rejoin us, and open it up for Q&A. We've got a couple of questions, Q&A already posted. Please share more if it's questions about the activities that have happened at GE Appliances and Toyota. Those questions are okay. But here's also an opportunity to ask more questions just about the tour itself, about the experience. We can try and answer those questions as best we can. All right, Matt, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Karen, for leading us through the content for the tour. We do have a couple questions already in the chat, so I'll get started there. Nick asks a practical question. What city is the tour based out of? I can take that one. So Nick, we start in Louisville and then we wrap at TMMI in Princeton, Indiana.
There will be, because we're traveling to Princeton, Indiana, the TMMI plant. And of course, Rich needs to get back to Louisville. So there will be transportation back to Louisville for those that want to go back there, so that you can fly in and out of Louisville if you wish. Otherwise, you could travel on from Princeton, Indiana, if that's your preference.
Okay. Before we jump into the other two questions there, I'm sort of selfishly going to ask a question because it's something we didn't explore so much, but I thought it was worthwhile to explore. The two sites that we're going to see, they're very different. TMMI, Toyota, Greenfield, Rich at GE Appliances, Brownfield, as you described. I'm kind of curious to hear, what's the value in seeing two sites like that? Rich, what would you say are the distinct learnings you'll see at GE Appliances versus TMMI?
Well, for us, I think you're going to see how do you do this in an existing facility, right? That doesn't have the TPS kind of culture already embedded, right? And so how do you build the capability within your organization? How do you convince leadership that this is the right thing to do? How do you gauge the workforce? Like all the things you got to do to go on this journey. So I think it's got a lot. We'll share the adversity that we went through and our learning, but we'll also share what kept us kind of motivated. And so I think it's just a different perspective, versus Toyota. Now, Toyota is like very, very, very good. We aim to be that good maybe one day. But it's just different situations we both are faced.
And then Scott, what would you say? What are the unique learning experiences people have at TMMI versus GE Appliances?
That's a good question, Matt. I think primarily, again, I've not had the pleasure of going to the GE facility. However, just understanding, some of my exposure to some other clients that, they're on their journey. I think within TMMI, it is a greenfield. They've been doing it for a very long period of time, and they are executing it very well. I joined Toyota from a different manufacturer, from a different OEM, and I had the fortunate pleasure of being assimilated into that Toyota culture, right? And when I first started doing this externally, it was a kind of a shock that you beat yourself up against the wall. How come you guys don't think this way? And it's just been engrossed. And so the challenge, as Rich mentioned, the pitfalls, the struggles, believe it or not, we still have some of those internally too. We have to develop our own people and keep significant focus on that development, or we run the risk of backsliding. And this is a journey, right? You have to sustain it over time. And fortunately for Toyota, we have that embedded culture, and everybody's kind of firing on all those same cylinders. And it makes it maybe a little easier, but it's also the pressure's on to sustain it. there's all constant pressure. So I think those are some of the unique things you'll be able to see, kind of how it's operating in a very fast pace, problem solving very quickly, on the fly, reacting and responding to andons urgently, and keeping the place going.
Give people a sense of what's possible if they pursue it doggedly.
Absolutely.
I'll start with questions coming in from the audience. We have just a couple. First here from Stephen. This kind of relates to your journey at GE, not GE Appliances, Rich, but GE in general. You've been there for 34 years, or had been before it was sold to Haier. Steve asks, Rich, can you share how the team transitioned from Six Sigma to Lean following Jack Welch? Was there any change to the performance assessment systems? So kind of getting at that, the long journey.
Yeah, so I was at GE during the days when Six Sigma was, sort of again, like it was part of, like, you had to be a Six Sigma person. And it kind of ran its course. I think the important thing to remember in GE was GE back in those days under that leadership was a bit of an initiative company. So they were always kind of picking an initiative with Six Sigma, or eBay. There was many of them. I think the difference was there was a group of folks within GE that we were doing some lean learning, kind of under the Six Sigma umbrella, if you will, and we were getting some really good results. So, and I think we just kind of kept doing it, and then kind of Six Sigma sort of eventually just sort of faded away. It really never got the results, I think, that they really intended. And so and lean's really become for us the main thing we focus on. It's not an initiative, it's just what we're trying to become. And I think it's interesting, if you look at GE now under the new leadership, they're very much now getting back on the lean journey, and so that's where they're at, and they're actually making some nice strides. I keep in touch with my old GE colleagues, worked there for a while, so I know a lot of them. But I think that's kind of, we've kind of moved on from that.
In fact, just this week, Rich, I don't know if you caught it, but current GE CEO Larry Culp put on a virtual conference called the Lean Mindset Conference to share a little bit about what that company is doing with lean these days under new leadership. It's quite an event.
Okay, this is more of a technical question, not so much tour related. I do feel obliged to ask it though, because I believe Henry also requested this in the registration process, so I want to help Henry out here. He asked about kitting. He's also from Maine, so that's also pulling at me here. Mr. Toshi from TSSC told him that I guess, Scott, you were instrumental in some of the kitting work that was done at a plant in Maine. Anyway, I guess will you have the opportunity to learn something about like how to manage this in a high mix, low volume environment, and will you see anything related to kitting inside of the plants?
Is that question for me?
Yeah, I aimed it at you, Scott. Yeah.
Okay. Our facility is not really a high mix, low volume facility. It's a high volume facility there's a few what we call katashikis or different option content, and it's a mixed model line. But I think more specifically, when you're dealing specifically with how to determine the way to produce on a mixed model or a low volume, high variety type line, it's all predicated on individual circumstance is a big part of it, but keeping the basic principles and the basic thinking about lead time reduction and understanding the impacts and how to try to eliminate waste through that. And specifically that site is our showcase site that makes the wood stoves up there in Maine, that they were struggling and they were using batch processes. And so just keeping the same general principles of trying to reduce lot size, to reduce lead time, and what made sense from a mixed model perspective on a high variety, low volume type production and managing to demand as opposed to just filling a system and hope it sells. You build what's been sold. I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers the question specifically, but and on this specific tour, I don't think we'll see that, at least in Indiana. I'm not sure about GE, but our volume, I want to say, I think they're running around 60 seconds right now, every vehicle, 60 seconds. So
Hmm.
it's much higher paced, higher volume.
Yeah, you're not going to see low volume here either. You will see some variety. We do have a few kitting operations. Again, to Scott's point, that it's a very one of the like our favorite answers is like it depends. So
Yeah.
like it sort of like depends on like what you're trying to do. And if you're trying to like if you're trying to run different mixed model production and you have a lot of variety of parts and you can't like actually physically fit them in the team members pitch, it lends itself to maybe kitting as an option. So it's not like you just kit or don't kit, you know, it's like it's sort of like, where does that come into play, right? When is it when is it important, right? When is it needed for to be successful for the team member is the way to think about it.
And now that now that Rich mentioned that, if the specific thing is about how to kit and when to kit or an example of it, we have an area specifically where we build up the rear deck hatch on either the Highlander or the Sienna, that because of the footprint and the space of all of the associated parts is so large, and the space at which where the team members are actually assembling the deck hatch is minimal. We have something called our Karakuri area that they pick in sequence all of the necessary components that will go into that specific unit and send it over via conveyor, elevator over the top, and send it directly to line in sequence. And you will be able to see that if that was the question.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's also important to note, you know, when you go to the facilities, having been on several of these tours, there's a great temptation to sort of copy paste or try to copy paste what you see. Like Scott and Rich are mentioning, it's not that at all, but trying to understand the basic thinking, the principles, and how things like kitting were solutions to solve these seemingly intractable problems. Really good question here from Jason. We've talked a lot about the technical stuff. Curious to hear about the management approach. He asks, will we have an opportunity to experience how either site conducts daily stand-up reviews? Jason said they're constantly attempting to learn to improve their own and could use some solid examples. So I'll start with Rich. Will we have a chance to see any of that?
I haven't got to the details of like when we're going to the floor and whether or not the Gembo will be happening at that time or not. So maybe I just need to see, like, it needs to sort of align with if they're doing that at that particular time. But that could be something we could try to work in. But we do that. You know, the Gemba is where you need to have the meetings. So doesn't do you a lot of good meeting in the office.
So real production we're encountering. This is not a fake setup that we're putting on. And then Scott, maybe it's similar to Rich because it's a live environment, but do you think there may be a chance to see some daily management or stand up?
Seeing as how we're on a tram, we're not actually walking on the floor for various restrictions and reasons. The narrators, of which I will be one of them, depending on which tram you're on, we try to call that out and point it out every opportunity we have. You will definitely see even a small huddle where a group leader and a team leader or two team leaders that they're working on a specific problem. You may see them up against a flip chart trying to work through a problem or something like that. We will call that out as we go by. We will definitely point out where the obey is happening. We try to hit the floor when those morning huddles happen, but it's hit or miss. And the last couple of times we've done this, we've missed it. So I can't make any promises that we'll get to go actually and go watch one of those huddles. I can assure you we're not going to be out there with them while they're doing that. We'll be able to point them out and kind of see how that happens on on a regular basis. And we will emphasize a lot of the tools that are used in those as we go through the floor. As we drive around the factory, you'll see all kinds of examples of pop-up stand-ups, if you want to call it, that, you know, the different Jidoka tracking boards, as well as if they're concentrating on a specific issue that's a thorn in their side, they'll pull a flip chart out there and they'll start working through what kind of root cause that they can try to get to, and they'll do it right out there, right on line side. So when we see that, we will definitely draw people's attention to it as we go through.
Yeah, live problem solving.
Maybe the other thing I'll call out, and Scott, perhaps you could elaborate on this, but during the afternoon of the day that we're in Princeton, will be kind of somewhat structured, but also a chance for participants to kind of organize conversations about things that are most relevant to them. So
absolutely, and that's those. Yes, I didn't mean to interrupt, Josh, but those will be some breakout sessions to where if that's an interest, we can perhaps pull together some material and kind of have a deep discussion or highlight some of that experience and exposure for folks, by all means. And that can be one of the topics that we would address or highlight.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more question here. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. But Jirish, it's not specific to the tour, but the approach to transformation, which is a huge topic of the 3 days. But he asks, are there multi-day transformation or Kaizen events taking place at either facility? And if so, can you share the outcome? I'll first ask Rich, is there any of that happening at GE Appliances?
I have a poster in my lean office, and it's Mr. Oba, and it says, "We do daily Kaizen here. We don't do Kaizen events," and it's a pretty good reminder. So I think early on there's this tendency to want to do Kaizen events. What we do now is we do like things that are designed around learning. So like the Shukin type activities, like we're trying to do anything we can do to like improve a process, but develop some capability in people. So we'll share a thing we do called immersion. It's where we take people leadership to the floor and we immerse them in this lean thinking. And essentially we found that if you really want to transform yourself, you have to transform your leaders. That's the key. They have to like learn this stuff just like everybody else. And in fact, that was a big struggle. I'll share that during the tour here of why like we got that backwards, because and a lot of people do. But developing leaders is really what we do. And on the shop floor, it's about trying to make improvement every single day, not really event based.
Scott, anything you'd say differently or?
I would 100% agree. And I would, in my experience working with many different companies, a lot of folks that approach it from an event type, Kaizen event type activity, usually lack that kind of overall focus for the transformation, the actual transformation. They're looking at more, from my experience, it's been more short-term gains. How do we get over a hump, or how do we hit some KPI, versus how do we change the culture and how do we strategize on this is the way we are going to do business moving forward, and little baby steps every single day, right? You have to have little improvements, just build on those improvements, and over time those improvements will show bottom line results.
Okay, we've gone 1 minute over, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I want to thank Karen, Rich, Scott, and Josh for joining us today. And also special thanks to Rich and Scott for opening up GE Appliances and TMMI to what we hope is a pretty large group. If you're interested in attending this tour, I posted the link to apply in the chat. We'll also follow up with email and with instructions on how to apply. So thanks everybody for joining, and have a great weekend. Take care. Farewell.
Thanks everyone.